Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Boruto anime review. This one's going to be for episode 214, which is called Predestined Fate. So yeah, pretty big, sort of important episode, though in general they didn't really give it the sort of high-end deluxe animation treatment. It was nicely animated, but they definitely didn't go sort of above and beyond. And I think that is just a case of they have a massive amount of episodes that they're going to sort of need to put at least decent animation into coming up. I'm guessing they're saving the kind of big one for the upcoming Ishiki versus Naruto and Sasuke fight. And a certain kind of new power-up that we're going to see there. That's where I think they'll go all out, equivalent to some of the best episodes that we've seen. But the main thing with this episode is that we got more of Amado's explanation about the Otsutsuki, answering a couple of the questions that of course popped up naturally based on what wasn't said in the previous episode. So then the obvious one was, okay, the karma mark is a resurrection thing. It's basically sort of an extra life, quote unquote, for the Otsutsuki. It means you can't truly kill them so long as they have a karma mark. So how do you actually kill them? Because as Sasuke points out, that would mean Ishiki technically has 2 karma marks, so he can die like twice and still be okay. So how do we actually, kill him in this case? Why are you so confident that this is the instance where it happens? Because otherwise, won't he just resurrect into Kawaki? But as Amado points out, the key of this is that it takes time for the karma to extract, like we knew from before. It's decompressed and it has to, uncompress, within the body of someone. So it is compressed and it has to decompress throughout the body. That's 100% done with Jigen, because he's had that body for so long. But with Kawaki, it's still in progress. And this is why the whole, mystery before Kawaki was even revealed of the talk about testing and has he reached this stage and stuff like that. That is all tracking the progress of I think they used the word in the anime for the first time here, the Otsutsukification level of both Boruto and Kawaki. So Kawaki isn't quite finished yet, so he can't be used as a sort of resurrection vessel until that finishes. Meaning that in this instance, Ishiki really only has one option, and that is to save himself. He has to resurrect into Jigen. But as they've explained before, Jigen is not a suitable vessel, and as they talk about throughout this episode, he is going to basically burn out within a couple of days. That body cannot handle the full power of Ishiki, and he's going to permanently die. So how to kill an Otsutsuki is force him to resurrect into a body that is not suitable, and then basically waste as much time as possible. Now, what it means is that we get this reveal that even though Amado's working with Kashin Koji, you get the sense that Amado didn't tell Kashin Koji the full story, and that he felt that he would have the ability to kill properly Ishiki, but now, as Ishiki taunts Kashin Koji with, it's almost like he's being used as a sacrificial pawn here rather than as a shinobi. So they do end the episode on a different point, because this one adapted, I think, chapter 47 and nearly all of 48. So it left about 5 pages at the end of 48 that it didn't cover, that I guess we'll get in the next episode. So just a slight difference. It was still on the note of, Kashin Koji's about to be killed by Ishiki, but they had a slightly different take on it in the manga, but we'll get that. So that was interesting, and you had Naruto once again be he kind of feels sort of a connection with Kashin Koji, but he's still not entirely sure why. But it becomes sort of clear to us later on, even though they don't fully make the connection with Naruto, and that is because as Ishiki comes out and shrinks the mask of Kashin Koji, we get the face reveal in addition to Ishiki kind of saying it out loud. Kashin Koji is a clone of Jiraiya. Now, I think any fan who is familiar with the series probably figured out that Kashin Koji is Jiraiya related in some way. There was not enough information to say for sure that a clone is the full answer, because we don't know that Amado works with cloning necessarily, but I suppose it makes sense that he's advanced the technology enough that this is possible. Now, there's obviously a lot of questions that stem on from this of just like, wait, how did he get Jiraiya's DNA to make a clone? Why specifically did Amado focus on Jiraiya as the clone that he actually wants? And so on. There's a lot of questions that surround that sort of stuff. It helps to explain a bunch of things in that, okay, since it was Jiraiya, this is how he was able to enter the Leaf Village without immediately putting off the sensors, the barrier in the village, is because Jiraiya's from the Leaf Village, and the way they explain how that thing works is that, they don't sort of, I guess, remove chakra signatures of people who have died, so because of that, he was able to sort of come in and out without actually making any alarms go off. So, that explains a few things, and they link it into the whole, destiny, fate of Jiraiya, that he is someone who sort of assisted with changing the fate of the world to a degree. And Ishiki sort of pointing out that, Amado made a clone of Jiraiya to hopefully link onto that same, importance. But you're just a clone, you're just a sacrificial pawn. You are not going to accomplish as much as actual Jiraiya did. And so the question is, obviously, can the clone live up to the original? And where do we go sort of from here? Now, what's interesting about this is that, we really only have a small amount of Kashin Koji content left. What we're going to get in the next episode basically is going to catch up anime-only people with the manga readers in terms of everything we know about Kashin Koji. He's still a little bit of a mystery character in terms of what's going on here. But getting into more of the rundown of the episode, I suppose, we find out that, as I talked about, I think at the end of my last review, the explanation about how Ishiki is forced to revive into Jigen is because the flame summoning trap that Kashin Koji catches him in, it's natural flames summoned using summoning jutsu rather than chakra-based flames. So his ability can't shrink. His ability with the karma mark can't absorb them, because we've got it explained to us that you can only absorb chakra-based sort of elements, basically. You can't absorb sort of natural water or natural fire. But he switches and begins to use his other ability, his ability to shrink things on the fire. But as we know, he's only at 10% power. The body can't handle him exerting his full power like that, and so his shrinking ability overloads that. The crack appears on the core, and the flames come again, and as Amado explains to us, he is now forced into a position where he has to accept that he either dies here, doesn't revive into anyone, or commits to, having full power, but being on a bit of a timer here to get stuff done. So that's what he does. We get the full reveal. They drag it out, but they eventually show you Ishiki Otsutsuki for the first time, and I think it looks great. This was probably the best animation they had of the episode, was just the character reveals for maskless Kashin Koji and then full-on Ishiki Otsutsuki. Just those kind of visuals of their faces done in a detailed style. So that was really cool to see. And immediately they get across the power level here of, now that he's at full power more or less, not really hindered by anything except sort of a time limit of a couple of days, he just immediately shrinks the flames. The flames that he struggled with for minutes before, in seconds he shrinks them. And as he engages Kashin Koji, his shrinking ability, which we'd seen before, mainly used with the kind of chakra rods in the previous fight with Naruto and Sasuke. Here, these giant columns in the back, he's just like glance, shrink, and these giant kind of objects are just disappearing from the room. And then towards the end of the fight here, we see that the kind of other side of this ability is when he shrinks things down to the point where they're not really there, it seems like he can just bring them back to full size sort of wherever he wants. So there's not just a sort of shrink and then regrow ability, but there's also a sort of shrink, kind of tuck it away and then place it somewhere else type ability to it that just seems incredibly powerful. And it highlights that, like, even though like Kashin Koji is really, really powerful with all the different kind of flame jutsus he has, we know how powerful Jiraiya is. This ability is just so overwhelming of these giant objects can just appear around you, on you, in a millisecond. How do you actually counter this combination of abilities? Now, the only limitation they place on it is that he can't shrink living things other than himself. So that would just make it absurdly powerful if he could just look at someone and shrink them, and that's how he takes them out. But he can shrink like the mask on someone's face and any object in the room around him. So Kashin Koji gets his arm crushed, and it seems like he is completely done in this fight. Like, all Ishiki needs to do is to just create a few more pillars and he will just take out Kashin Koji for good. So that's the sort of tease going into the next episode, is that Ishiki is sort of mocking Kashin Koji. He is saying that you are not like the original, he's just Amado's pawn. So the question really is, will the clone reveal that he does actually have a sort of destiny of his own, a fate of his own? Is he more like the original than we think? That's what they're sort of playing with here. It's also notable that the feed goes off at this point, so the characters in the room with Amado don't actually see what's going on at this stage of the fight. But they're already preparing for what's about to happen, because a bunch of stuff happens in the room here. The other aspect of the karma mark working for Jigen, and him being Ishiki being reborn within Jigen, is that we find out that the reason that this is such a negative for Ishiki is that he loses the other karma mark. So Kawaki, his karma mark fully activates as this is happening, but then as he's reborn in Jigen, Kawaki's karma just disappears completely. It doesn't just shrink down into the small mark on the hand. Even the small mark in the hand is gone. Kawaki now all of a sudden does not have a karma. So this is a major, major reveal, because obviously Chapter 1 or Episode 1 of Boruto opens up with, in the future, Boruto and Kawaki at odds with each other, and both of them have karma marks. This means that at some point in the future, Kawaki gets a karma mark again. And so the question is, how does that happen? The thing it's immediately making you sort of think would be that, oh, they're setting up the idea that Naruto and Sasuke have to protect Kawaki, so that Jigen, who's going to come to try and remark Kawaki with the karma mark to sort of save his life, which even if he just plants the karma mark, he might be gone for a certain amount of time, but he'll eventually, that the karma will decompress and so on, uncompress, and he'll be reborn within Kawaki like he is in Jigen. It'll just take time, but he'll still be a threat in the same way that Momoshiki is a latent threat through Boruto. So even letting him near Kawaki is a thing that they need to avoid, and they're kind of teasing the idea of, oh, connecting the dots. Does this mean we fail in this upcoming fight, and If so, like, is a lot of the details about that opening scene beginning to sort of slot into place, or is there something more going on here? Very, very interesting stuff. And that's what's so exciting here, is that the preview immediately teases the idea that Ishiki arrives at the village again, but this time at full power. So they, Naruto and Sasuke, who were basically defeated by Ishiki before, admittedly, him at sort of full power in his sort of previous form, versus, say, Kashin Koji, who fought that same Jigen at only 10% power. The idea, realistically, is that this is sort of 200-300% power, if not more. How are they going to match up against him this time? The one thing they have going for them is that they have sort of seen his abilities to a degree. So that they having fought him before, some of the surprises that he has won't be there. But they didn't get to see his ability to just make stuff appear sort of out of nowhere, or so it seems. So, he still has tricks up his sleeve. The teaser for the preview obviously is suggesting the idea that Boruto wants to get involved in this fight. And going into it, you're kind of thinking that, yeah, this is not a good matchup based on what we've seen before. But Boruto, especially Boruto, if he could turn into that Momoshiki form, that probably would be a matchup. But then you have to deal with Boruto in that form, and what happens? There's so many questions and moving parts that you now have to kind of consider here. And this is why the Boruto story is so strong at this point, is because you have all of these little things that you're thinking about the whole time, of set up towards that chapter in the future. And then you have enough details in terms of the technicalities of how the karma works and what is a requirement, what isn't a requirement, that there's a few different varieties of ways that this can all play out. But what seems to be the setup here is that we are going straight into Ishiki versus Naruto and Sasuke, and that is going to be very, very exciting. The Leaf Village under attack once again. They're going to have to protect Amado. They're going to have to protect Kawaki. And yeah, it looks like Konohamaru is also going to confront Ishiki. That's not going to go well. So hopefully he gets saved before he gets absolutely destroyed. Because we don't need to see Konohamaru just get wrecked again. So yeah, this is the big fight here, and I'm assuming once this sequence of events, the result of this fight and the sort of aftermath comes to a close, that's when they're going to have to make their decision with the anime to sort of, I think, go into more of a larger anime-only arc, just because once you finish this arc, you're within sort of 5-6 chapters of where we are currently. And if you start to cover those 5-6 chapters of basically the setup for the next arc, you're going to blow through them really, really quickly. So, the content is beginning to run low here. We know from the opening and stuff like that, visuals, that they're going to go basically at least up until this point. So, the big question is, like, what next at that point? What do they do? Now, I think that they need to actually have quite a few group of episodes. I do think there is a lot of stuff they can do. Like, there's a lot of novels and other content that they definitely could do if they wanted to. Obviously, you're kind of moving around the timeline a little bit to do some of this stuff, but like stuff like the Kakashi novel, I'd love to see that animated. They did a lot of the other novels except that one. Similarly, the Sakura novel, that's a really good story. And there are, I think there's like at least one or two Boruto small novels as well, but I'm not sure how much hype there necessarily would be for them. But there's content there if you need it and you really need the time, which I think they will coming up. So that's, I think, everything I want to say in the video here. Yeah, in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on this episode, but that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.